What's up guys, Mindset Performance Coach Adam Comet here, and in today's video you're going to learn the optimal grinding to studying ratio for poker players. Now this is a big question to tackle. I've probably been asked this question at least 50 times throughout my coaching career. Players asking me, Adam, how much should I grind? How much should I study? What's the optimal ratio? And to be honest, I've shied away from the question. I've been like, oh, it's very specific, it depends on your circumstances. But today, I'm not going to sit on the fence, and I'm going to give you exact, direct numbers of how much you should be grinding, how much you should be studying, relative to your situation, and then we're going to stress test it with real life examples to see if it holds true. I want you guys in the comments to let me know if you disagree with anything, or from your experiences, you found these ratios not to be true, but we're going to tackle it, and we're going to give some real concrete advice and actionable steps for you guys to take as a result. Alright, now before we dive into the juicy stuff, I want to introduce you guys to a problem-solving model called the Multiarm Bandit problem. Alright, and the Bandit's referring to a slot machine. Alright, this is used in machine learning, and it's going to be very apparent for what we're going to talk about today. So imagine you're a gambler in Vegas, and you're stood in front of 6 slot machines. Alright? And each slot machine has its own individual payout structure. Alright, so some are paying out fast, and some of them are paying out slow. You sit down and you start playing on one machine. As you're playing on this machine, you're getting information on this one machine, and now you have the option to keep playing on that one machine or to stand up and try a different machine. Alright, so let's say this one machine, you're getting some good spins. I've not really played much slots, but you're getting some good momentum. You have the option to either exploit the machine you're playing, alright, exploit the machine you're playing, or to explore other options. Although this one might be paying out at a certain rate, you don't know what you're missing. Alright, so you've got the option to exploit the current machine or explore better options. Alright, now your ability to make the most money over the long term is going to be dictated by this equation. How much you can use your knowledge to exploit what's in front of you, and how much you can gain new knowledge to improve your strategy, alright, to jump between machines. So as a poker player, this is the exact same situation you're in when it comes to grinding and studying. Grinding, as long as you're a winning player, is you exploiting. All right, you're exploiting the games and you're getting paid at a certain rate. All right, you make that short-term profitability. And your studying is you're exploring. You're trying to find better strategies, better ways to play so you can come back and make more money. And over the long term, your long-term profitability is going to be judged by how well you do both of these. All right, how well you have the ratio of grinding to studying, to exploiting to exploring. And we're going to tackle this today and hopefully give you guys some good ideas of how you should manage this equation. All right, so with that as a kind of framework, I then want to set another pretense. And the pretense I'm going to set is, as a poker player, you have one or two objectives, all right, and they're generally going to correlate to the same strategy. You either want to be as good as possible, you want to become the best player you can be so that you can play high stakes or whatever stakes you class as the highest for you, and you want to make as much money as possible in your poker career. And generally, those things are going to correlate to the same sort of approach, all right, because if you become as good as possible, that gives you the opportunity to make as much money as possible. I'm sure you guys will all agree with that. The best players are going to make the most money, depending on game selection. But yeah, you're going to basically try to optimize your profitability over the long term, not the short term. This matters a lot, all right? If we're playing a longer term frame, it's going to make a bigger impact. All right, the next pretense I'm going to set is that your career is going to be mid to long term, all right? So we're not talking about how to make the most money in a month or in a week, because if we did, we'd be talking about complete different ratios. Let's say your poker career, for the nature of this video, is going to be 2+ years. All right, at least 2 years, but 2 years and on. And the reason I'm setting this as a pretense is if we're thinking very short term, how to make the most money right now, it's going to be completely different. Your approach to grinding and studying is more of a short term model. Whereas if we're thinking more long term, over the course of your career, which I'm sure you guys will agree, do you care how much you make in a day, or do you care how much you make in your career? It's much more important in your career, right? So if we're optimizing for the longer term, we're going to approach it differently, all right? It matters quite a lot, all right? So With that in mind, I then want to set you guys some considerations before we go into setting the exact amount you should be grinding and the exact amount you should be studying. So there's some factors I've come up with. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. There's definitely ones that could be added. But here are some things to consider before you decide on your kind of grinding to study ratio. The first thing is your ability relative to your stake. All right, so if you're an absolute crusher at your stake, you've got a high win rate, one of the highest win rates you've seen at your stake, you're going to make a lot of money by grinding the high hours at those games. All right, so you generally want to increase your hours if your win rates and skill level's really good at that game. All right, these are just factors. We're not going to go too exhaustive on them, but we'll come back to them as we go through. Next thing you want to look at is how fast you are progressing / moving up stakes. All right, if you're a low stakes player and you're progressing quick, you're moving up stakes at a very fast rate, you might want to have a different ratio of studying to grinding. All right, we're going to talk about these specifically when I go through the rules and the examples, but how fast you're progressing. If you're someone who's quite content with the stakes they're at and you're not looking to progress quickly, you might want to have a different approach, which would generally be more grinding heavy. So those progressing quicker are generally going to have a study heavy approach. Those who are progressing slower or less kind of high, going to the less high stakes, might want to go for a more grind heavy model. All right. Next thing we want to look at is your endurance for grinding. How many good quality hours of grinding can you get out of yourself? It's all well and good saying I want to grind 8 hours a day, but if after 3 hours you start losing focus and you start playing your B, C, D game, we're not going to be able to optimize 8 hours of grinding. All right, so we've got to get realistic with how much you can actually get out of yourself. You can train that endurance over time, but it's just a factor to bear in mind when it comes to setting these hours. Then we've got how much you can learn in a given day / week. All right, how much can you actually learn in a day or week? Now, if you speak to most poker players, they would say they're studying, they're learning, they're trying to improve, they're trying to get better. They're watching videos, learn lots of stuff. All right. Now, it was interesting. I listened to a Raise Your Edge podcast with Ben CB, and he said, if you ask players to write down 10 things they had learned and implemented into their game in the last 6 months, most players would come up short. All right. So we've got to ask ourselves as poker players, how much are you actually learning, putting into your game, and effectively improving? All right. So a lot of people think they can learn so many hours a day. It's not really true. All right. So most models, what I've seen, and from like kind of high performers, you can get 1 to 3 high quality, deep focused hours of studying in per day. All right. This is almost any topic. All right. There's a great book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, who thinks the best performers can get up to 3 hours of high quality, like real high quality learning, whereas most people 1 is a good benchmark. All right. So we're going to come back to this because it's going to set a pretense when we go into the numbers, but we can get at least 1, and 3 is kind of the upper boundary. All right. We can push it on from there, especially if we look at different study methods, but in terms of intense learning, that's kind of the framework we're going to be using. And the final consideration is, what are the opportunity costs of not grinding? All right, what are the opportunity costs when I study over grinding? All right, I could have done another 20, but those are the first ones that came to mind, and some of the most important ones when we're considering our grinding to studying ratios. All right, now I'm going to do something brave, and I'm going to come up with a set of rules to follow. It's going to be 2 rules, and then we're going to explore if these rules stand up in different situations. All right, so when it comes to setting your optimal grinding to study ratio, there's 2 rules I want you guys to follow. All right, rule number 1 is you should grind more than you study. All right, you should grind more than you study. So at least 50% of your designated hours to poker should be grinding. And you might say, Adam, why is this? All right, and the reason is, when you get above that 50% mark of studying, there's a tipping point where you can't implement what you're learning. All right, so as you guys know, as poker players, there's an element of learning new stuff, but it's no good just gaining knowledge. Gain knowledge. You've got to actually use that knowledge in-game and implement it. And I've worked with hundreds of poker players, like multiple hundreds of poker players. I probably spoke with maybe 500 to 600 players, at least in their careers. And I haven't came across a player, a very successful player who's crushing their games, who studies more than they grind. All right, and the reason being is it just becomes really hard to implement. It really becomes really hard to implement what you're learning. You get to a point where you're almost more confused because the knowledge coming in, you can't filter it into your game. All right, so this is the rule number 1 is we've got to grind more than we study as a pretense. All right, so anyone who's thinking, all right, I'm just going to grind, like say some up and coming players might go, I'm just going to study 8 hours a day. It's like, okay, but is that effective? All right, so the first rule, and we're going to stress test this, so bear with me because we're going to go through examples of mid-stakes, low-stakes, high-stakes players and see how this would look and see if we can actually break these rules in practice. That's the first rule. The second rule is you should aim to study at least 10% of your total poker hours. All right, at least 10%. All right, you might go, well, I don't know where you're plucking these random numbers from. All right, so the reason being is because, as I said before, most people can get one high quality hour of study, of deep focus, of deep learning out of themselves in a given day. All right, that's like not a high, not a low. It's like most players should aim for one high quality hour. All right, so if you can get one high quality hour, that high quality hour is going to have a great ROI. By that I mean it's going to improve your game over the long term. It's going to allow you to have good earning potential over the long term. So if you were the guy who got the one quality hour every single day, you're going to be able to progress and your knowledge and skill level is going to improve at a good rate, which is going to give you more earning potential. So most players should be aiming to get that 1 hour. Now, if you're a grinding machine and you're grinding like crazy, even then you can still get that hour. All right, so say you're putting 10 hours into poker every day. You could grind 9 of those hours in 1 hour of study. All right, so even on the top threshold of grinding, you get 9 hours of grinding, you get 1 hour study. All right, so we want to aim for this. I'm going to go through some models and some examples to see if this holds true. All right, so 2 simple rules for you guys to bear in mind. At least half your hours should be grinding, and at least 10% of your hours should be studying. So what we've got here, we've got 50-50 is the kind of the most extreme outlier. Then we've got your grinding hours. This one can go all the way up to 90, but not above 90 in general. All right, again, we'll talk about examples of where you might want to break that, but generally between 50 and 90. Your studying, on the other side, is between 50 and not lower than 10. All right, as high as 50, not as low as 10. All right, so these are bandwidths to work in. All right, so we can toggle them up and down, but we can't go too far out of those ranges. All right, so now we're going to go through examples of how this could look and also what different players at different stakes might want to use as their approaches and why they might want to choose more studying or more grinding based on their situation. All right, so first of all, we're going to look at a low stakes player. All right, so he's been playing it 6 months to a year, doesn't really matter how long, and he's putting 20 hours into poker. So the first thing before we do anything else, split our hours, decide how many hours you are putting into poker in a given week. All right, in a given week. All right, so let's say this player is putting 20 hours into poker in a given week. Because it's almost like having a pie. We've got to cut the pie between studying and grinding. We've got to decide in advance how big the pie is. All right, it's not infinite. All right, it's going to be in that bandwidth. All right, so let's say this player is playing 20 hours of poker per week. So first of all, as a low stakes player, the opportunity costs of not playing are lower, right? Compared to high stakes guy. If you're a low stakes guy, not playing, the opportunity costs aren't that big. All right, just your hourly is lower. All right, you also have the most to learn, so the ROI of your studying is a lot bigger. If you look at learning models, there's almost this like very steep learning curve at the start. We have a massive gain, and then you have something called the law of diminished returns as you study more, and it almost like evens off in this very depressing way. If you're a high stakes guy, you're towards the tail end of this flat, almost like flat curve with your learning. But as a low stakes guy, you've got so much to learn. All right, so you've got this opportunity to improve your game a lot by studying, but also you need to play. You need to put reps in. It's like in the gym, you need to put reps in to actually get good at the game. So we can't just go, I'm going to study for 20 hours. We need to actually put reps into playing. All right. So we've got opportunity cost of playing on that big, and we've got a great opportunity to learn, but we also need to get reps in for our kind of grinding. So how would you approach it as this player? I would say we should really approach it with in terms of trying to get that 1 hour of high quality study a day. All right, so let's say this player's playing 5 days. He's putting 5 days into poker. I say go for 5 hours, 1 hour a day of studying. All right, so that would give him 5 hours of studying. That would give him 15 hours of grinding. And his ratio of grinding to studying would be 75% grinding, 25% studying. All right, so he'd fall nicely in the model. The lowest this guy could go would be to 2 hours. If he did 2 hours of studying, and he did 18 hours of grinding, that will put him right at the bottom in terms of his kind of 10% to 90% ratios. All right, so that's a kind of good framework. If he went over 50%, let's say he was doing 10 hours plus, I say that would be too much. Alright, so he's pushed it too much. This low stakes guy needs to get reps in of playing poker and actually using what he's learning. Alright, so somewhere aiming for that 1 hour, that kind of 25% studying would be a good model for this player. Now let's have a look at a mid-stakes player. And let's say he's put in 30 hours a week into poker. Alright, so now this player has more opportunity costs if he doesn't play. The cost of studying is going to hurt a bit more because he could be grinding, having a good hourly. But at the same time, he's still got a lot of progression to make. All right, he's still trying to improve his game, both his win rate at the level he's playing, and he has the opportunity to progress from mid stakes to high stakes. All right, so this player needs to have a learning curve. If he wants to maximize his potential to earn money in his poker career, he needs to have a good study habit. So again, this player might want to start out with 1 hour a day. All right, so let's say this guy plays 6 days a week. All right, so you do 6 hours of studying, and then you do 24 hours of grinding. All right, so 6 hours of studying, 24 hours of grinding. This would leave him with a ratio of 80% grinding to 20% studying. All right, so still in that framework that we've set. Let's say this guy is a bit of he loves learning and he's really good at studying and he enjoys it. Let's say he increases his threshold. He goes, you know what? 1 hour a day, that's nothing for me, Adam. I want to do 2 hours a day. Awesome, let's test that. So 2 hours a day would be 12 hours of studying in a week. All right, these are high quality hours. This is not passive watching Twitch, watching YouTube, even watching like Run It Once or passive trainer videos. This is full immersion. This is note taking. This is complete distraction free, really engaging your mind and learning at a high level. All right, this is not watching passive content. All right, so let's say this player did 2 hours a day. That'd be 12 hours in a week of studying, and 18 hours of grinding. And the ratio would be 60% grinding to 40% studying. Again, very much within the framework which I'm setting. All right. Let's say this guy wanted to go for 3 hours a day because I know I want to do more studying than him. 3 hours a day. Now he's broken this model that I've come up with, all right? And now he'll be grinding studying 18 hours, and he'll be grinding only 12. Now his ratio of grinding to studying would be 40% grinding, 60% studying, all right? So this player, I would say he needs to grind more, so increase his total hours, so it's at least 50-50, or study a bit less and put some of those hours into grinding. All right, could it work? Potentially. I haven't seen it work in practice, but you generally, because you need those playing hours. It's so hard. It's like if someone wants to get strong in the gym, it's like, okay, you can take all those supplements you want, you can eat all the food you want, but you need to get in the gym a certain amount of time to lift. It's the same with poker. You need to put those reps in. You need to actually use that knowledge. And as soon as you tip that threshold too far, you just can't. You're not able to implement. You're learning at a quicker rate. Like there's more knowledge going in, but there's no implementation. There's no deep knowledge that you're actually being able to use into your game. Or there's too much knowledge and you become overwhelmed. All right. So that player again, 2 hours would be his kind of limit for studying. All right. Then let's go to a high stakes player. All right. So a high stakes player, let's say he's playing 50 hours a week. All right. Generally, the high stakes players are going to play the most. There's a reason they're the high stakes guys. And let's say this guy has massive opportunity cost by not playing. His hourly is really high. He's in super juicy games and he wants to maximize his hourly. And let's say he's playing 5 days a week and he's putting 10 hours into poker. All right. Now this player has more of a trade-off to make, and we could argue, okay, in the short term, he's best off grinding. All right, because his hourly's through the roof. But if this guy's planning on playing poker for another 2+ years of poker, he's going to want to make sure that players don't overtake him. He wants to make sure that he's keeping with the curve, that he's improving his game so he can continue to maximize his hourly. All right. So this player just maximizes his grinding, doesn't study at all. There's going to be a limited amount of time before other players overtake him. All right. So with that in mind, this player again might want to go, right, I want to have that one high quality hour a day of studying. So you might go for 5 hours of a calendar in a week of studying, 1 hour a day of 5 days, and then 45 hours of grinding. All right. Because remember his hours are really high. So this player would fall into the category of 90% grinding and 10% studying. He's maximizing his hourly, so he's exploit, but he's still exploring. He's still getting better, he's still improving. If he tipped that too far, went to 99% grinding and kept that studying low, he's playing a risky game. All right, because how long before someone else, other players overtake him and his hourly drops, especially in the high stakes games when the fields are a lot smaller. All right, so because we're trying to play this kind of multi-bandit game, we need to exploit by playing, but we also need to explore how to get better. And as soon as we stop exploring and just exploit, we're going to get overtaken. All right, and we're not going to get the optimal strategy, and we're not going to make the most money over the course of our poker careers. So hopefully this has been of interest to you guys, and I would like to know your thoughts in the comments. So let me know what your current ratio is. Let me know in ratio terms how much you grind compared to how much you study as a ratio. I'd love to know if any of you guys are not within the boundaries I've set. And if you're not, let me know why. And let me know if you think it works for you. Obviously, everyone's individual and there's different things that work for different people. But hopefully this will give you guys a good framework. All right, so to give you the rules and to simplify it and summarize everything, aim to grind more than you study. Aim to study at least 10% of your grinding hours, and aim to study at least one high quality hour. At least one high quality hour per poker day. All right, if you can stick to those 3 rules, you've got an amazing system. All right, and that's generally going to be very much like 80-20 principles. You're going to get the maximum, a lot out of your poker career, but obviously you can switch it around at times. There's going to be some of you guys who are chasing high volume because you're doing leaderboard challenges, or you've got a massive rakeback deal, and you might just want to grind and go out of sync. All right, so in the short term, it's fine to go out of sync. All right, so every single week, you don't need 100% follow the exact guidelines, but over the course of months in your poker career, you should follow a sort of framework like this. So if I looked at the amount of hours you put into poker in the course of a year, then we should be able to go, okay, how much percentage was grinding and what percentage was studying? And it should start to fall into those bandwidths. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, let me know in the comments which of what percentage you fall into for your own ratios. I'd love to know that. It'd be super interesting for me. And if you like this video, smash that thumbs up. Also, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos of this nature. And if you're a poker player who wants to improve their mindset and you're not sure where to start, there's a quiz in the description. Click on that, go through the quick questions, and it will tell you what level your mindset is right now. And more importantly, it will tell you how to improve it. All right, guys, that's all from me for today. Thanks for watching to the very end. There's going to be plenty more coming from me very soon.